and Moadim Simcha. I want to share with you an amazing story that I was told just last week by one of our regular listeners. But first, I want to say that this evening's Joy of Gratitude is once again sponsored in memory of Linda Firestone, Leah Bat Aaron, and may the learning and the growth be a merit to her. So let's go on to the story. So after last week's Joy of Gratitude, this young lady, we'll give her a name, let's call her Emily. She contacted me to tell me something completely mind-blowing that had just happened this past week in her life. But first, we need to rewind about 5 years to when Emily started a job in a school, okay? In the school, she was teaching, but she was also doing lots of extracurricular activities with the girls, and she was told to lay out her own money, and she would get paid back. You may be able to hear where this is going. Well, the first month's paycheck and expenses were paid, so everything was going well. But after not too long, she was told the school didn't have any money and was probably going to close. Now, she didn't take it seriously. It wasn't said in a serious way. And she just carried on teaching and paying for the things that were needed, assuming that the money would get to her at some point. However, as the year end approached, the school closed down, the company was running the school went bankrupt, and she was left with nothing. She was owed more than $24,000. Can you imagine? Yeah, exactly. She couldn't pay her rent. She couldn't buy basic things like food. She assumed she would never see this money. But what could she do? She got on with her life. Somehow she struggled through. Let's fast forward 2 years later. 2 years later, she gets a random email from the secretary of the old school that someone who'd been one of the fundraisers for the school felt so bad about the situation that he had managed of his own volition to get together a small amount of money for each teacher. And for her, it was $3,000. Remember, she was owed $24,000. For her, it was $3,000. She was so happy and she was so grateful. She said to the secretary, I want to write a thank you message. The secretary said, no, there's no need, don't bother, it's okay. But Emily insisted, and she got the person's details and she sent him a message. This is what she basically wrote to him in a quick summary. She said, thank you so much for going out of your way to get some money for us when it wasn't your responsibility. I'm so grateful to Hashem and to you. And she explained how she had struggled so much without the money and how challenging it was for her, and how receiving this money is going to make such a difference to her, and she thanked him for caring. Okay? A few months later, Emily was staying in someone's home. Now, this lady is blind and she has teenagers coming over to help her. One of these teenage girls gets chatting with Emily and tells her that her family are always having guests around for Shabbos. Why doesn't she come too? So she agrees. She turns up at this home, and during the discussion with the lady of the house, the hostess, it comes out that she was a teacher in that school. In other words, Emily explains that she was a teacher in that school. They were talking. And the hostess says, one second, was it you who wrote that letter? Now, Emily didn't understand. You know, what are you talking about? So the hostess explained that it was her husband who had paid the money. And she had written the thank you letter to her husband. She had made the connection in her mind with the surnames and everything. When the host heard who was sitting at his table, he got so excited, and he said that he was so touched by the letter and he'd actually cried, and it made him realize how much the money was needed, and it inspired him to want to work hard to ensure that the rest of the money was collected. Now, nothing happened for a few years, and then literally last week, when we had this session, last week, she came home to find a check waiting for her for over $21,000. This man had been so inspired by her thank you letter that he didn't stop until he managed to get every single dollar for every teacher. Now, Emily said to me that she realized what a blessing this was from Hashem, because if she'd got the money back then, she would have just used it all up. But now, in the midst of Corona, when she has no real employment, she suddenly gets a massive paycheck when she really needs this. Now, I just want to rewind 3 years to that letter. Let's just think about it. This money was hers by right. She had laid out from her own money. She'd earned money by working, and she was only getting a small percentage of the money that she was earning. She was told not to bother to send a letter. Who writes a thank you letter for something like that? It was her money. But that's the point. We said last week, if you remember, that one of the integral components for gratitude is to be willing to admit that it's not mine by right. This young lady, she's internalized this concept. And even though it was her money, she expressed gratitude. And we see the outcome. Now, I'm not saying that every time you sincerely thank someone from the depths of your heart, it's going to get you $21,000. I'm not saying that. But what it does do is it creates deep, meaningful connection between yourself and those around you. I don't know if you've come across this book. There's an inspirational book written by somebody called John Kralik. It's called, there's two versions of it. It's called either A Simple Act of Gratitude or 365 Thank Yous. John, in this book, describes his life as a complete disaster. He was depressed, he was broke, he was overweight, he was onto his second divorce, living in a miserable apartment in LA with no air conditioning. He was officially an attorney, but he couldn't afford to pay his employees their end of year bonuses because his clients weren't paying their bills on time. Everything wasn't working. So what happened? In his own words, this is what he says. I'm going to read them to you. In December 2007, I'd reached what I viewed as a nadir in my life. While my life seemed full of debts and disasters, I ached for the things and the security I felt I deserved. On January the 1st, 2008, as this dissatisfaction pervaded my thoughts, I took a walk in the mountains above Pasadena. And there I was inspired to write one thank you note a day for the next year. Although it actually took more than a year to complete the writing of 365 thank you notes, I continued writing them until 365 were completed. And then I kept on. I learned to be grateful for the life I had, recognizing that the love I had for my children made my life already richer than the many people I envied. I learned to be grateful for my law firm, my practice, and for the love of friends and family that surrounded me. I became thankful for the people around me who dealt with challenges far greater than the ones facing me, with courage and style. I learned to recognize the many people in my life who had protected and cared for me. But more than just learning to appreciate, this is not him, this is, I'm saying this, but more than learning to appreciate the good in his life, he also describes in the book how his whole life changed and his relationships and connection to people were enhanced tremendously. He says that he finally experienced true friendship. Now, this concept is probably the most basic message of Sukkot. We leave our home, we go out to a flimsy sukkah and we say to Hashem, we don't want any fake protection. We want to just be held in your embrace. We connect up to nature by holding the lulav and esrog, by eating outside and sleeping under the stars. And together with nature, together with the whole of creation, we praise and thank Hashem for everything. It's a time where we would, under normal circumstances, we would have guests. And if you live in a neighborhood like mine, when one family starts singing in their sukkah, all the other sukkahs join in. It's a time where, under normal circumstances, thousands of people would gather together to dance at the Simchas Pesach Shoeva and sing about the connection to each other and Hashem. And as we know, the sages tell us that the Arba Minim represent the four species, represents all different types of Jews, and they're all gathered and bound together. And of course, Sukkot, in the harvest festival, you know, when back in the days when everything was farming, was the festival where the farmers gathered in their crop. That's what Sukkot is. It's connection, closeness, love, and friendship. And we get that by expressing gratitude. That's what we're all looking for in life, right? So I'm not going to ask everybody to write a note every day. In fact, my very close friend, Eddie Shine, who's also my life coach, pointed out to me that if it was easy to write 365 thank you letters a day, then everybody would be writing a book about it. So clearly it's not easy. So I'm not going to ask for that. But here's the challenge for this week. Find one person this week, someone who you've perhaps taken for granted, someone who even maybe you have a slightly strained or distant relationship with, and write them a thank you letter. Tell them how much what they've done means to you, how it's affected you positively, and how much you appreciate it. And hopefully that will be just the first step to using gratitude and hakaras hatov, gratitude, to building a close relationship with everybody around you. Chag Sameach, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful, lovely Shmini Atzeres and Sukkot Torah. Thank you.